I think it's time I share the truth about my success and how I got here. And it's hard to say, but stick around to the end. I want to watch the full video to understand where I'm coming from.
Before I tell you how to get rich, I want to tell you something that you didn't expect. Side note, my son really wants the forklift to be in this video, so here it is. It's actually really cool. It sprays vapor out the back. Why does some people succeed and others don't, even when they're given the same opportunity? The answer isn't what you think, and I didn't realize it until I was asked by a coworker on a W-2 job that I was embarrassed to even be at. So by the time I was just 19, I had about $100,000 saved. And by the time I was 25, I was worth about $3 million with no debt. But none of that would have happened if I hadn't grown up knowing this one thing. Stick with me because I'm going to tell you the part no one talks about and what actually built me before real estate ever could have. Let's just have some open dialogue about where I actually came from. And as I'm explaining this to you, I want you to think about where you actually came from. What makes you make the decisions that you make today? So I come from a family where we're not super poor. My dad grew up more on the poor side, just kind of also that poor mindset. I mean, if I had windows open, ran the water a little too long, left doors open, I was getting in big trouble. Don't take too long of showers, those type of things. I'm sure some of you guys can relate. My mom, however, she grew up, I guess you could say kind of in this, not the suburbs, but middle class. My mom, I would say she wasn't, her and her family, they weren't hurting for money, but they definitely, they weren't going on lavish vacations every few months. And I feel like that's a lot of people. I mean, the middle class takes up a lot of the population of this world. And so understanding that, this probably sounds familiar for a lot of you guys, and understand that these are beliefs that have been put into our mind that are ultimately a ceiling. We gotta understand that beliefs are a ceiling. They're as high as they're the highest we can go. Grandpa, he built their house from his job where he was in construction. Every so often he did get to take home 2x4s and all that stuff. He built their house off scrap wood. And so they just couldn't afford wood. They couldn't afford a 2x4. But growing up, my parents, they did great. I mean, they are very, very driven individuals. And the reason I'm talking about growing up is because this is a huge part to play in how I've gotten to where I've gotten. I mean, I'm talking diapers on. This is super important. This is what has cultivated me. Again, understanding that the beliefs that are made, that your parents instill into your heart, that's the ceiling. Growing up, don't get me wrong, I had a great childhood. It was great. I really don't have anything to complain about. My parents, I wouldn't say that they're the best with money. I don't think that they were raised to understand how money works and how you can leverage it. Do you remember one time they tried buying a rental property? This was in 2007, and I think we know how the story goes on that one. They leveraged it, and ultimately they had to let the house go. My mom took the route of education. She has her PhD in education, so she's been a superintendent, a principal. College is super important to her. Education is super important to her. And my dad, on the other hand, he didn't go to college, and he's running a business. Not necessarily the business model that I want to run, and so business was scary for me, and education had to be the way to go. Get educated, work a W-2 job. That's the way I was raised, and I think that's the way school has raised us to be, and that's the route a lot of us are going. Now let me talk about my dad's business for a little bit. So he breeds Labradors, beautiful puppies. It was honestly a joy being able to grow up on the farm, and not just dogs. We had all sorts of animals. Now, I understand my dad wasn't the best with money, but given that my mom spent years and years and years at a college working to get this degree, she had tons of student debt stacked up. She was making roughly the same amount as my dad, who was running the business. Again, I wasn't a huge fan of my dad's business model, and I think he really could have scaled it into something a lot bigger. But think about it. If he had a litter of puppies, normally Labradors have about anywhere from like 6 to 12 puppies. One time we had 15. But each pup he would sell at about $1,000. And so if there was a litter of 8, which is on average, that's $8,000 per litter. And he would have maybe 2 to 3 litters a month. Now I know you got to pay for food, and you got to pay for any vet visits, and antibiotics and medicine and vitamins to keep them happy, healthy dogs. But nowadays he's selling them for $2,000 a pop. So it's no question that my parents were hard workers. But here's something I didn't realize. The most important thing my parents gave me, it wasn't money, it wasn't advice, it was something way less obvious. And I'll get to that in a second. Now, what has shaped me from childhood into the person I am today, which I think is a question all of us should ask ourselves. Mine, I was working a W-2 job. I remember a coworker was really excited because he was going golfing with his dad. I'm not a golfer. I would love to get into it, but it sounds super fun. So I answer and I said, great, that sounds awesome. And he said, yeah, I'm really excited. What are some fun things that you did with your dad growing up? I've never been asked that question. I probably made him think that I was insulted by it, by how long I took to answer. And I took a while. I had to really think about it. What are some fun things that I did with my dad growing up? Nothing was coming to mind. And then all of a sudden it clicked that, well, first of all, I was thinking of fun things, and the only thing that we did growing up, our bonding moments, was working. I mean, living on a farm, it was working. It was weeding, splitting wood, mowing the grass, weed whacking, feeding all the animals that we have. Now, don't get me wrong, we had plenty of fun times. Looking for salamanders in the pond. I like to think I was the king of building forts. My little sister, she was a bug fanatic. She would have the bug aquarium things or terrariums, and she would catch a ton of bugs. And it was a fun time, don't get me wrong. But any time, just during the day, work hours, you were working. That is, for me, what shaped me into how I'm able to produce what I produce today. That's a huge part of me. My whole life, you got to think about it, my whole life, happiness, bonding, fun was working. And so I love to get out there and mow. I love to get out and weed whack. For those of you that know me, I flip homes, I wholesale, I'm a real estate investor. I love to do it. I genuinely enjoy it. It's not work for me a day at all. Before I keep going though, I want to ask you a question. Are you a procrastinator? I totally said that wrong, but you know what I'm saying. Are you a big thinker? Someone that has ideas and they can just go to an event, a networking event, and you're like, oh, I want to start this business. I want to do this, but you never take any action? I mean this genuinely. Take an hour. Go sit on a rock. Go to your happy place. It's not going to be in your room in a dark, okay, maybe it is. For me, it wouldn't be. But go to your happy place. If that's your video game area, if that's a meadow, if that's a creek, if that's on top of your roof where you have a nice view, go to somewhere where you can just get away for 1 hour and just run through your childhood. Run through the good times, the bad times, the traumas, the reason that makes you make your decisions. Because I have found that that's what it is. The reason that you are a producer or lack thereof is your childhood. That is what has shaped you into who you are. So I'm telling you right now, take the time, not right now. If you want to, pause the video right now and go do it right now. Or just finish this video and after, set a time, hour of the day, and just go drive somewhere, go sit somewhere, and think about what has made you where you are. And I'll be honest with you, you might not figure it out in that hour, but if you do, you'll know what to do. When I found out why I am the way I am, it's helped me structure and move past things that I never thought I'd be able to. Okay, so I knew that I could work. I knew that work came easy for me, but what did I do with it? At 15, I'll tell you just what I did. So I grew up on a farm, but right down the road, there was a massive gated community. It was an HOA, which is quite a bit different from farm life. I mean, we're talking doctors and lawyers in these beautiful houses that had really great lives, I'm sure. I mean, being a doctor and a lawyer, you have a lot of authority, you have a lot of power. And going from having that power to retiring, yeah, it's not going to last that long. So the HOA creates a board where people can voice their opinions and feel like they have power. It's honestly pretty pathetic in my opinion. But that's where I worked for 3 years. It was during school, so I only worked there during the summer. But my first summer, I made $3,500. And obviously being 16 years old, my thought isn't really, oh, I'd love to invest this. I need a car. My dad and mom aren't going to provide me with one. I got to buy one myself. So I buy a little truck And it wasn't too long after that till I realized this Ford Ranger, which was actually pretty cool, it's only getting 15 miles to the gallon. So I did a straight across trade for a 2010 Toyota Corolla. Not glamorous, not crazy. It was one of those typical, just the gray colored ones. Not pretty. I was getting 35 miles to the gallon. It's not always been in my interest to make money, but to save it was huge for me. Now, don't get me wrong. I love making money, multiple streams of income. I'm all about that. But I've always been really, really good at penny pinching, at saving, at being frugal. It's one of my superpowers. Now, living where I lived, it wasn't the coolest thing in the world to have a Toyota Corolla. All my friends had really cool trucks and whatnot, and I wanted a truck. I mean, come on. We drive our truck to get firewood, we can actually take it places off road. When I was living on the farm, that's what you had. And so I felt a little out of place with the Toyota Corolla. Now, I didn't want to buy a truck to just have and, drive around and, kind of be my fun truck. I thought I could flip these things. And so I started buying diesel trucks, and that was my thing. I understood that I needed to have a niche. And so I strictly stuck with 5.9 Cummins, usually 98 to 2002, and then the 7.3 Power Stroke, which obviously, what was that? 95 and a half to 2003. I didn't mess with the 6.0s or 6 blows. In other words, they suck. Blow head gaskets all the time. And honestly, I couldn't afford anything newer. These were the 1,000,000-mile motors, and I was flipping them like crazy. My 3 summers working with the HOA, I made about $12,000. But with that income, I was using it to buy trucks and flip them. By the end of the 3 years, with $12,000 being my income, I was able to come out on top with $27,000. So I basically doubled my income just from flipping trucks. And it was at that moment I realized, why would you work a W-2 job? I mean, yes, you can work a W-2 job to get income and to maybe start a business, save up. But I think we know now there's so many other ways to make money. I doubled my income before I was old enough to vote. And it wasn't because I was smart. It's because I actually said what I was going to do and I did it instead of just talking about it. Now, here comes the conflict, because I've understood that, wow, I can make a lot of money by not working with the employer. But the internal struggle was my mom really wanted me to go to college. She had a college fund saved. That was my destiny. That's what my older sister done. I was the next in line. I had to go to college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I had to go. And when it came to business, I really only had my dad's example of business, which I didn't really want to model after. What did I do? I ignored everything in me that wanted to go build something, and I took the safe road. I didn't go to college, which actually made my mom kind of mad. I became a welder. But before I became a welder, I started working at a mill, the local lumberyard mill there. It was an experience. I will say they are slave drivers. There's not a seniority rule, so the harder you work, the faster you move up. And this was great for me because I know work. I'm a hard worker. Within 3 weeks, the snow came, the rain came, people were calling out. I showed up every single day, and within 3 weeks, I moved up to the top position below management. So this was still an operating position. And what I did, I was the very front of the mill. Very stressful position because the faster you can go, the more money the mill makes. Manja, I want more. That was them all the time. So stressful. You're constantly getting brought down into these meetings. They're bringing you down. They're just ruining you, and it was not a good work environment. Was not having a good time. I forgot to mention, this was only temporary. This was not my life plan. I would like to say that it was to be an entrepreneur and business owner, but I still had that W-2 mindset. I wanted to be a welder. So during the time of working at the mill, I had applied to be a nuclear welder at a naval shipyard, very close to Seattle, Washington. It normally takes about a year to a year and a half to get in, so that's why I worked at the mill for a little bit. But after the mill, I finally get into the shipyard, and I am so excited. I'm going to hopefully in 20 to 30 years be making a steady 150 to 180 grand, maybe by then I'll be making $200,000 as a welder. That would be insane. I can invest my money into retirements. I can save. I'm going to set myself up for financial success. And once I get married, my wife's going to love me because I get some of the best health and insurance benefits offered by the government. All right, so do you guys want to know where your tax dollars are going? Okay, I'll tell you. So working at the shipyard, I got to find out, and I'll tell you, this is how a normal day goes at the shipyard. You get there at about 5:20, okay? You come in, and my first day, I'll tell you what, I didn't know where I was because no one was there. Well, that's because no one shows up till about 6:20. So the first hour, you're kind of just getting paid to be at home. Now, the place that you meet, it's called a hangout. It's not called a break room. It can't be called a break room because, well, you're hanging out. It's not really a break room. You got to understand if an aircraft carrier or a submarine doesn't need work, nothing's in the dry dock, and you have nothing to do, you're not allowed to go practice welding. You're not allowed to go sweep a broom. The whole, if you got time to lean, you got time to clean, that does not apply at the shipyard. You have to sit in the hangout in case something comes up because they're all about timing, getting it done quick. So you just get paid to sit down, watch Netflix. Yes, the hangouts have Xboxes, they have TVs, they even have kitchen. And let me tell you what happens. 6:20, people start rolling around, 6:30, whatever. And usually people kind of just chill, relax, kind of, I would say talk, but no one talks. Everyone's just on their phone for an hour. And then normally, someone will kind of start making breakfast. Like, hey, do you want breakfast? Oh, you want some sausage? There's normally about 20 of us to a crew. And we'll start making breakfast. Hash browns, eggs, pancakes sometimes. And then once we're done eating breakfast, we'll finally we'll get our jobs. And so we'll look at them. Okay, I got to do this. I got to go weld this little thing on the submarine. Okay, cool. And then it takes roughly about an hour to get paperwork done. And that one I'm not being dramatic with. It actually is a ton of paperwork. So much paperwork at the shipyard. Finally, it's around 10 a.m. So for the last 5 hours, you've done pretty much nothing but had a great meal, maybe watched a show or two of Netflix, and you got paid for it, right? It sounds fun, huh? Well, let's move on. You get down to the boat and, weld for a little bit. They'll say normally in a 10-hour day, you'll get about 2 hours of welding done, and this is true. Because you got to take a lunch, right? So you go up there for an hour, which ends up being 2 hours, and then you come back down, and we normally get off at 4 o'clock for a 10-hour day. But here's the thing. You start shutting the machines down at 2 o'clock. You got to pack up, right? It takes about 15 to 30 minutes to pack up. Yeah, keep in mind, the submarine is quite a ways away from the dry dock. It can take 10 minutes to walk there, and that's true. But 2 hours, that's kind of ridiculous. So yes, in a 10-hour day, you maybe weld 2 hours. And so I know they're really strict on timing. We need a welder. If something comes up, we need someone readily available. But if people actually worked there, you might get a little bit more done. Your precious tax dollars. Thank you for the few years I worked there. It was terrible. But here's what scared me out of that whole experience. I started to become one of them. My drive was going. I was lazy. And I didn't even notice it was happening. The silver lining for me was, it was going to one of those motivational impact summits, the real estate ones. There was someone that I liked. I don't even remember who was speaking, but it was so motivational. If you aren't motivated, it is required that you go to these. If you are motivated, it's kind of just like a monthly or quarterly checkup. You go to them, you get filled up, you're able to network a little bit. It's great. For me, that was the silver lining. Instead of watching Netflix during all the downtime I have at the shipyard, whether a boat was in or a boat wasn't in, I started studying real estate. I took my real estate course, I passed my test, and now I was a licensed realtor in the state of Washington. I'll tell you what, interviewing with realtors, hanging out with realtors, going to their first meeting, it did it for me. It made me understand what I wanted to do. The different persona of a welding crew versus high-class individuals is just insane. And I'm not saying that welders aren't high-class individuals, but they're not high-class individuals. You hang out with welders, you'll understand. I love them to death, and I love to weld, but I also love to make money. And then I got the opportunity to shake hands with someone that changed the way I look at life. It was the CEO of one of the largest real estate firms between Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and I think California, John L. Scott himself, Lennox Scott. I talked to him briefly. My manager was kind of upping me that, I was this really driven person and, we got to talk a little bit. But of course, he's a busy man and he's talking to hundreds of people. But just that one interaction for me, it did it. It made me understand what I wanted to do. Why am I still at the shipyard as a licensed real estate agent? So after about 6 months working at the shipyard and being licensed, I left. I was there for 2.5 years, but the 2-year mark, I got licensed. 6 months later, I was gone. I knew I wanted to be in real estate because 2 years ago, when I first got at the shipyard, I bought my first house at 19 years old. I put 20% down. I didn't have PMI. And day one, my mortgage was paid. I knew I didn't want to pay a mortgage, so I started renting the rooms out. And later on, I realized, well, I have a room that I'm inside of. I could be making money off my room. So I go to the garage. I set up my bed and I sleep and I put a curtain up and I start making another $800 a month in my room that I was in. The scariest thing I ever did, it wasn't buying a house. It was quitting the shipyard. Having that security and telling family that I'm going to go into real estate. Ones that don't own businesses and don't really understand, they thought I was crazy. But I wasn't getting into real estate as just a broke person. I had already established myself. At a young age, I was flipping diesel trucks. I was really good at saving. When I was in real estate, I already owned a house that had about $150,000 worth of equity, and I had about $60,000 in the bank. Between everything, I was worth about $250,000. Now I have pretty much painted the picture for you of how I got to the point of real estate. It all started from childhood development. How my brain is structured, how the wires and chemicals in there come together to formulate action and thoughts. That's what is important to diagnose and figure out before you even try to motivate yourself to do something. Now that I was in real estate, I was helping clients buy, sell, and I was getting pretty big paychecks. My first paycheck was $7,000. It wasn't too long after that where I bought my first rental property. A few months after that, I bought my third, all with cash. I saved. I didn't want to have to cash. I don't want to cash flow $200 a month. I want to cash flow a lot. I've always been big on not spending debt. And this is not because of Dave Ramsey. I found him later. And there's a lot of things about Dave Ramsey that I just do not agree with. But it really makes sense. If you save up your money and you cash flow, it just makes so much more sense. And I'm going to get to that later. I met Melissa. Some of you may know her from my videos, the love of my life, who is now my wife. I'll never forget the moment when I decided I wanted to sell the second rental. Oh boy, she was 3 hours away, but she would come down and she helped me paint. She helped me clean, mow. We got that house done and turned around, and I made $250,000 off that house, all with her help. Later on, we got married. I'll never forget the moment the house closed was actually the first day of our honeymoon. There's not a feeling in the world like drinking pina coladas right after you get married too. Sitting in a huge infinity pool. This was a massive sister resort of multiple other resorts. You never had to leave the resort. But sitting in that pool, drinking pina coladas, and getting $250,000 in my bank account, I felt pretty good. So a few months later, my wife and I, being real estate lovers and investors by heart and savers by heart, we decided to buy a flip, which I have a full video on of us being honest, opening up about freshly getting married and buying a $500,000 asset, all cash, and just seeing where it goes. All in, head first, her getting pregnant during the time. Basically, would we suggest someone else to go through what we did to accomplish what we did? And you'd be surprised by the answers and some of the questions she asked, and it gets really deep. So go check that video out. But we finally get done with this flip. Huge fast forward. You know when you're working on a jigsaw puzzle or any sort of puzzle, and at first you don't make a lot of progress. You're kind of just, your head's on fire. You're just thinking about, what am I going to do? How do I move this? Like, what do I need to do here? And then you kind of start to get it, and then it clicks. It's almost like that last piece, not the very last piece, but the one where you finally understand how this works. And then from there, you're Speedy Gonzalez, all the rest of the way. For us, that's how it was at that point. We had money. We knew what to do with it. We didn't win the lottery. We had spent almost a decade working towards getting to this point. The puzzle piece finally clicked. We had cash, more cash coming in, and not more than we knew what to do with. You hear that all the time. I make so much money, I don't know what to do with. Someone at the shipyard said that, and they were making $120,000. How can you only make $120,000 and not know what to do with it? Like, come on. We were making a lot more, and we knew exactly what to do with it. We knew where to put it, where not to put it. I want to talk about the first flip that we did. This is not something that was mentioned in the other video that we put up. How we did it, I guess you could say. Like, how did we start? It was our very first flip as a married couple. Obviously, I had an investment property that I sold and I made $250,000 off of. But how do you walk into something that you are blind to and you don't know what to do? I started off, this is going to be weird to hear, but by getting a W-2 job for a construction company. As weird as it sounds, I knew this house needed plumbing, electrical, sheetrock, a whole new roof. It needed everything. I didn't know how to do any of that. And so I get on with the construction company, and I am the most annoying person on that crew because I am asking questions. I mean, you got to understand, I have hundreds of thousands of dollars. I do not need this job. I am texting after hours. I am feeding off of the knowledge of these older gentlemen that honestly could flip houses themselves if they wanted to. That comes down to the childhood development and whether they want to break that or not. Now, to answer the question, how did you get into real estate? How did you get into your first flip? This is going to sound overrated, cliche, and ultimately just words, because probably 95, maybe 98% aren't going to do it. But what did I just explain to you? We had the money, and if we didn't have the money, we could have got a hard money loan. No big issue. That's not the issue. The issue is, where do you start? And we just did it. That's the cliche word. Just do it. Nike, whatever. Make it happen. Take action. You hear every entrepreneur say that. Just do it. Just take action. They're saying that without going back 10, 20 years when they first started and explaining their story as to how they got started. They just did it. They just took action. I just put an offer in on the house. I got a job to learn how to flip it. And if you're super scared, start with something small. Start with, a lot of people can start with land flipping. That's a lot cheaper to get into. And sometimes you just have to go in there, weed whack, cut a few trees down, rent a excavator or a bobcat skid steer for a little bit, clean it up, level it out, and then make $5, $10, $20, $30,000 off it, whatever, whatever the amount is, doesn't matter. Make a little bit of money off of it. Real quick, I show you exactly how to do that. Look in the description. It'll say 30-day free trial. Yes, you don't pay for 30 days if you like what I'm saying. And also leave a like and comment. I don't know how all that works. If you like this content, subscribe and, hit the like button or comment or whatever. So fast forward from our first flip, our second flip, our third flip, our fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10. We've done a lot of flips. It's simple for us, I guess you could say. For a lot of the people watching, whatever you do in life, there's something that you do every day, right? You could be boring and say that you breathe every day, but you go to work almost every day. You put clothes on, hopefully every day. And so for us, flipping has become, we've got it down to a T, I guess you could say. We're getting them done in roughly 3 weeks to 1 month. Again, we're doing most of the work ourselves. Sometimes we'll subcontract stuff out. This is not a video on how to flip. I have videos on how to flip. I have a course on how to flip. If you live close to me, I take on 5 clients at a time, one-on-one coaching. I actually meet with them in person. If I'm going to scam them, they're going to punch me in the face. So this is a video showing you how I got into real estate, what I had to understand to actually fulfill my destiny in real estate and how you can do it as well. The craziest part, you hear this all the time. I have this, I have that. No debt. No debt. Who else can say they have no debt? I will tell you something right now. Right now, we have 5 rentals. That does not sound like a lot, but each rental is fully paid off. I don't have any debt on any of the rentals. Every single one of those rentals cash flows $3,000 a month. Okay? So that's what? $15,000. Now, here's the thing. All the gurus out there and the real estate people, whether they're lying or not, they're saying they have 25, 50 units or whatever, okay? Let's say they got 50 units, okay? 50, and we got to figure out what they're cash flowing. So if they're cash flowing $200 a month, which is gracious, some are just breaking even, some are cash flowing 100, some are cash flowing 500, whatever. But let's say $200 a month, okay? So 50 times 200 is 10,000. This is just me. I would rather manage 5 properties and make 15 grand a month than 50 properties with the headache of all that and the tenants and everything and make 10,000. Just not worth it for me. So if you guys want to leverage and do debt and all that stuff, that's fine. That's cool. Ultimately, I want you to understand how you grew up, where you came from, and unpack why you are the way you are. And I know that's super vague, but if you've watched this video, I think you understand where I'm coming from. You didn't come here just to hear my story. You came here because something in you is trying to figure it out on your own. You don't have to. My final challenge for everyone, go to that quiet spot, 1 hour, and replay your childhood. Replay your childhood. You might cry. You probably will cry, but that's okay. I did. Good memories, bad memories, tears of joy, real sadness, tears, all of it. That actually made me understand why I am the way I am. Whether it's good, whether it's bad. But once you understand, you're actually able to change it. You're able to do something about it. Like, share, subscribe. Please, this helps so much. I don't know how it helps. People say that. I'm not monetized, and so I'm not getting any money. But yeah, like, share, subscribe. Let's see what happens. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.